Hey gang. So I've already recorded this once, but without the sound. So we're gonna give this a go again. All right. So I had a lot of people request some information on how I achieved the look that I did in the images of my model Chloe that I posted in the Infinite Color Panel group, as well as in my Everybody's group. So I'm going to do a tutorial to show you how I got from point A to point B and all the steps in between, just a little quicker than normal. All right, since I've already done this twice. All right, so first things first, my name is Terry from Terry Hofford Photography, and I like to do creatives. So I am in love with the Infinite Color Panel because it allows me to take my work to the next level, which you'll see in the next, um, once I get to Photoshop. So to start with, one of the questions people have is like, how did you achieve the cool blue tones? Well, the first thing was this is straight out of camera, what you're looking at right now. And this image was shot with two strobes. So one facing the model, like where I was standing with a soft box and no gel on it. And then behind her, pointed slightly, kind of feathering off of her. You can see it comes across a little bit, but then it feathers off behind her was a strobe, just a cheapy strobe that I got off of Amazon with a blue gel on the front, and it was probably about 3 to 5 feet away from the backdrop and the model. So it lit up her face just enough to kind of bring out the colors, which is exactly what I wanted. So now the thing is that I always will default first to presets that I've already made to see if they work with the lighting conditions that I have. And luckily for me, there's one that I made from a previous shoot that I've done that really worked that I created called Pastel Delight. Now with this particular preset, you can see that it takes things way cooler. My white balance can't, sorry, this keeps disappearing. But if we go previous, well, it's going to go through all of them. Oh my God. If we go back to reset, you can see that it was warmer, it was greener, everything is where it's supposed to be. And then I apply that Pastel Delight. Make sure you're watching over here for the changes that are going to happen. And everything moved. Contrast went up, shadows came up, highlights went down, clarity remained the same, vibrance is down, and so on. If we go down here, we're playing a little more with the color tab. This tab here, the hue, saturation, and luminance, each of those are changed a little bit. And this is something I had done before. So to ask me how I figured that out, I don't know. I just sometimes play around with buttons and hope for the best. Now, one of the things that makes a huge difference in the editing here is using split toning to achieve the colors or pull out certain colors or take away certain colors. So you can see that in my highlights, I wanted my highlights to come out cooler, so I made it a bit blue. If I am to change that, let's say here, you can see that it changes the whole vibe of the photo. It's not bad, it's just different. So I think I had about 167, right about there. And then same with the shadows. The shadows are in a warmer nature. So if I was to change that, it would make it way cooler, more pinky, whatever you choose. So again, I was probably, I don't even know where I was. A bit warmer. Probably about there. I'm going to change this all anyways in a second. And then down here, these have also been adjusted just a wee bit. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So yeah, so that's the first step that I go through to getting the tones that I want. I always think of Lightroom as kind of like the foundation, if you will. The other thing that makes a huge difference, sorry, I'm just scratching my back. The other thing that makes a huge difference is working with an extremely talented makeup team. Hair I could do without. I could probably like figure out something on my own that way, but makeup I am not the greatest at. And when you work with a very talented team of makeup artists, they're going to provide you a guide for where your shadows go, where your light will pick up a bit more so we can enhance it with the lighting equipment that we have, and then again in post processing. So they're laying the foundation for us, and then we're building upon that. And so my editing foundation, I always say, is always done in Lightroom. And the way it shows up here is not how it will finish up in Photoshop, but it's a good place for me to start because I like it. That's about it. I like it. Now, one thing I do with this is how it was without being changed too drastically, is for this particular shoot, I did bump up my vibrance and I did bring back a bit of the warmth, just a wee bit. Just again, because we're going for more of a Barbie, Malibu Barbie kind of vibe. So I would assume that Malibu Barbie would have very tan skin. So I want to bring that back to help me out. So then we're going to export this to the desktop. I already did it once. So let's do it again and wait for that to show up. Then we're going to bop on into here so you can see this was the finished one. But I'm just sad about it that I had to redo it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the beginning. Say goodbye to all my hard work. There we go. And I'll walk you through how I make my adjustments in here. So previously, before taking Pratik's portrait or the master class for retouching, I used to use Julie Kuzmenko's frequency separation. But then I watched Pratik's thing and I started playing around a bit more. Now I'm not great at this because I literally just started to learn it, but it is fun to play with. And it's an exceptional tutorial to watch, so I highly recommend it. I'm not getting paid for that, so I should be right. Pretty. All right, so dodging and burn, I'm just turning my brush to white to draw on the dark. To bring up the highlights, I brought down my flow to about 4%, and I'm going to shrink my brush down here so I can paint here just to kind of bring those shadows out a bit more, or to get rid of the shadows, not bring the shadows out. Just to kind of make things a bit more even, I guess. Now, because of the way I lit this, I don't want any critique on my lighting. Again, that's something else that I'm relatively new to. And I'm the type of person that has to fuck up a whole bunch of times before I'll figure out what works and what doesn't work for me. So while I appreciate critique, I know that it's not the best lighting. So we're going to make do with what we have for today. You get what you get and you don't get upset. So now the thing is with the colors I've chosen, you're going to see once I take the black and white guide off of here, you're going to see that it's a bit too bright in certain areas and it brings out the pink undertones. And I personally am not a huge fan of that. But what you can do is really just like bring the opacity down on that so it's not as strong. And I'm going to end up using frequency separation anyways. I know Pratik says you shouldn't use it except for at the end, but the thing is like, it's all I know and it's what I like, so I'm going to do it anyways. Don't tell me what to do. So with frequency separation, what it's doing is separating your layers into textures and colors, and then a brush layer in between to even out the skin tones. Now, I never used to do the brush layer, but it definitely does help with evening things out. So thank you to Pratik for that. And what you want to make sure is your eyedropper tool set by 5x5 average, and your flow again when we get to our paintbrush is going to be quite low. So that way we can just paint, and hopefully even out certain areas. And you just want to kind of go gently through, and then we'll come over here. Now again, I also don't use, I know I could be a lot more efficient if I actually use the tools to jump from one thing to the next, and I don't. Again, when you get to the habit of doing things the way you do things, you think it's more efficient, but I know it's not. But I just haven't taken the time to learn the commands to get me to jump around. So yeah, so you can see I'm going through and just kind of evening out the tones here. Now, because of this particular preset that I use, you can see it's a bit harsh, is the nice term to use, where it's like cuts off real quick, blue to skin tone. And so we're going to try to even those out a little bit so it's not as drastic and sharp. That means not the end of the world, but Also, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'm gonna do this relatively quickly and not in the best way possible. So don't take this as the best way to retouch. Again, I've already done this a few times, so yeah, so we're just gonna go through, get rid of all that stuff, doodly doo, even it out. So now I'm working on the color layer. If I was to take away the texture, you can see here everything's just nicely softened underneath, so that way when I merge things together, it's just kind of blending a bit softer. But it's not affecting the texture on top, which is nice, because you still want her to look like a human a little bit. Just a little bit, though, not too much. Just kidding. I just say that because it's funny. Anyways, sorry, I babble a lot when the camera's on and I'm trying to focus. So we're just going along, doing the thing. Sometimes I feel like I'm like Bob Ross. Anybody falls asleep, I'm sorry. And you might have some happy accidents. That's okay. All right. So we're just gonna go. There's a bit of chunky bits there, but that we can also take care of on the texture layer. But you kind of get the point of what I'm doing here. Again, I'm not going to take too much of your time, but where it's really noticeable is here. So we want to kind of blend that out a little more. Just make it easier. I'm going to show you another thing that I do to help with that. But first, let me take a selfie. Just kidding. I'm not going to do that. It just seemed like a good intro. All right, so we're going to go here. I would like to probably make all of that a bit more blue. So we're just going to kind of cool off that whole area because it kind of just cut short, probably because this created a shadow from that blue light behind her. Again, had I like really thought about what I was doing, I probably would have stopped retaking the picture or had an assistant like there to say, oh, can you just move the light back a little bit or fold their shirt down or whatever. But this was a creative shoot where we really just had like 20 minutes to bang out some fun photos. And yeah, so sometimes it's fun just to do that so you can be like, oh crap, don't do that again, right? Learning lessons. But no, nobody's dime but your own. So yeah, so we're gonna pretend that's good-ish. Textures, I might go in and just like do. Oh, so I'm using the patch tool. I should mention that. I like to use that because it's not as abrasive as the other ones. But again, that's just me. I don't know everything. This is just what has worked for me. All right, perfect. We're gonna. So that's what it was. That's what it is. Check. And we are going to merge everything together. Now I have a action that I created called inverted high pass, which I'm going to use, and we're going to bring our flow up here. It's 12:30. I have a client coming shortly, so I have to quickly get this done. So we're going to zip through, and we're just going to color everything, and you're probably thinking, what is this chick doing? Gosh, and Blur went out with the 80s. Well, good news is we're working on an 80s inspired shoot. So here you go. But no, but you'll see in a minute. So what I use inverted high pass for is pretty much the same thing I think that portraiture does. It's really just smooth things out and gives you a little bit of what I call an extra glaze on your images. And right now, obviously, it's a bit more than just an extra glaze. It is all the glaze and then some. But we're not going to keep it like this. We do want to bring it down only to about 15%. It's just a nice softening of the skin there to give it a little bit of a gloss, which is, again, just a personal preference, not the right way or the wrong way. So now, the way that I got the end result or the end image is mostly by just clicking and finding things that I liked. So I have it on the intense setting. I only usually will zip between medium and intense. Rarely do I ever use the light because if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well. That was a nice one, but not for this. So yeah, so I just really go through until I land on something that really catches my eye and makes me say, oh, that inspires me, which is kind of cool. And sometimes I'll come across ones that don't work for this particular set, but I know I'm like, oh, I would love to see that in another set somewhere else. So then I'll just move it over here and I'll show you guys how to do that in 1 second once I find something that I like. We're just gonna find one, even if I don't like it for this particular shoot, I will find something, something at all, anything that I would want to use for another shoot along the line. You know what, that one's kind of cool actually. I don't know what I'd use it for, but you never know when you're gonna need crazy things like that. Anyways, we're gonna keep going because it's a bit too dramatic for this particular. Let's go down to medium and see if we find anything. So literally this is it. I literally spend probably a big chunk of my time just going through and being like, do I like it? Do I like it? Do I like it? And then when I land on something to do, then that's when I keep it. Okay, but I'm not going to waste your time too much more. Let me just, here's the thing. It can be addicting because you never know what's coming next. So you're like, oh, but maybe if I click it, it's like playing the slots at the casino. You're like, maybe the next one will be the thing because it's infinite. So you never know. It really could be. You never know what you're going to get. All right. Okay, hopefully we get something in a realm of things that I'm inspired by. Okay, we're gonna use this one. It was kind of similar to the other because it is kind of 1980s. We're gonna zip it down a little bit. So let's pretend that we like this and we're like, oh, I have a whole series of images. So what you want to do is go here, drag it into your library, click infinite color, and then change the name of it so you know what the hell you're doing. So it'd be pink 80s, for example. Now, I had already done this previously when I actually did the series, so I am going to apply the original one that I had and remove the pink 80s to get us back to where we started. But yeah, so that's kind of what I do there, and then I can move this up or down depending, do I want it more yellow, less yellow? Do I want to bring more blues out? And then standardly, I will just go into my selective color tool to make the other colors pop. Specifically, the colors that are prominent in the image. So magenta in this case. Well, if they're bright, I should say. If they're pastel, I'm not going to. But whatever I want to bring out, I will play around with selective color to make it better. Cyans, this is where I can choose to make it greener or less green, or bluey green, whatever you want to call it. So you go blue, green-esque, cool tones, what ifs, kind of like that, for example. And then if we have any other blues, which you can see there's some blues showing up there, if I want them to go away, we can take them away completely, or we can bring them into merge them into the other color palette of bright turquoise, if we desire. But yeah, so usually that's a bit strong, so I will do that and then bring it down a little bit, just to kind of give it a bit of a little sample. And then the piece de resistance for me is usually doing the dodge and burn one more time. And this time for me, it's about just bringing out the highlights of the skin that my makeup artist has charted for me, or where I want it to show up more, just to give it a bit more dimension. And I'm just going to click off that to come back here. Don't really need that for this. We're going to go here. We're going to bring down our flow. And then we're going to... And don't worry, we don't have to keep the opacity super high. But it is good to have it super high at first, so you can see exactly what you're affecting. So you can pick up the natural highlights, create your own little bit of highlight, like wherever you're feeling. Make it really crazy. And like, yes. Like even that skin tone out there. Whatever, and then you want the burn, which will be right where the shadows are. Usually the corners of the eye. I do that, but not too much under the lip to make the lip bigger. Again, referencing where your makeup artist has already done the work for you. And then just kind of pop it up a little bit. So this, to to this. Just a wee bit of a difference. And voila, there you have it. Now, if you are saving for web, you obviously can go export, save for web, and see what she looks like. Boop, boop, boop. Oh, probably not at 100%. We'll say 33%, so we can see, get all that nice sharpness in there. Oh, I don't want it as a GIF. Save it as a JPEG, so it's a little better. But that way you get all your texture and all that good stuff. Another thing I like to do occasionally, because I do the softening bit, is I do like to sharpen it afterwards, just to bring back the crystals and the texture in the skin. So I'll create a second layer to do that, and then I can bring down the opacity of it so it's not super sharp. Just a wee bit sharp. There we go. So if we look at it, oh, look at how beautiful that is. I love it. That glitter. Cool. So that's that. So I'm going to save that. Check. And now if we go to Lightroom, bring that little guy over, then we reset it. So this is where we started. Started from the bottom. Now we're here. Just kidding. Come on, you. I don't know why it's taking its time, but anyways, you get the point. So you can see it's just a bit more, not a bit more, it's a lot more finished and together than the original product. So never be dismayed by what it looks like in the camera right away. Always wait till you get to the end to see, like, yes, like that is how I envisioned it. And that's why I love doing creatives, because it allows you to kind of create a world that is your own. And Infinite Color Panel definitely helps me achieve that without having to dick around in Photoshop on my own and figure out all the pieces. I mean, it's probably good to know how to do those things, but I don't have time. So it's better to just do this and click a button and hope for the best. So yeah, so I will share this on my YouTube channel. So if you have any questions, you can email me at terryhoffordphotography@gmail.com. Or you can shoot me a message on Facebook under Teri Ledgerwood, or just like message me below in the comments, or ask your question below in the comments wherever I post this. And yeah, that is essentially it. I guess I will talk to you later. Have a fabulous day.